Obu greeted Tianli, recognizing him as the prince's agent, and asked directly what urgent business brought him here. Tianli smirked and praised the grassland warriors' sharp senses for spotting him so quickly. He then revealed his true purpose. The prince had everything set for the assassination at the feast, and after it was done, the Khan must keep his word. Obu nodded, stating that as long as the prince ceded the Yanyun territories, the Khan would agree to eternal peace. Bator just snorted in disbelief. Tianli chuckled and confirmed that the prince shared the same intention. With that settled, Tianli said the prince would be waiting for the show at the banquet, and Obu cheerfully agreed. But Bator growled a warning that the people of the Wu dynasty were too cunning. Obu shot back that the Khan was no fool, and had already considered that. Obu pointed out that while the prince plotted against the northern barbarians, they too were scheming against the Wu dynasty. A game of mutual deception. The scene shifted to Civilization, who was suddenly hugged by Sisi. She demanded to know what he was hiding on his person. Panic flooded his mind. If she found out, everything would be ruined. He had to come up with a lie fast. He stammered something about how hard it was to scrub his own back in the bath, but Sisi was not convinced, so he claimed he had combined a towel with a wooden stick to create the so-called no-manual bath brush. Quite the improvisation. Sisi laughed, calling him dumb but crafty when it came to convenience. He played it cool, saying it was just a random idea. Then she announced she wanted to bathe too and demanded to borrow his bath brush. He hesitated, saying sharing might not be hygienic, but inside he was screaming about how to produce a real one in such short notice. Sisi narrowed her eyes. The way he dodged the question, combined with his earlier talk about a mission, made her suspicious. Then it hit her. She knew. She was convinced the key to his mission was hidden in that so-called bath brush. Civilization saw her expression and knew she was onto his secret identity. Pressing her advantage, she urged him to hand it over quickly so she could bathe. He fumbled for words. She called him out on his guilty look. He knew he was about to be exposed. Desperate, he decided to fall back on an old trick. With no other option, he bit his own hand and splattered blood onto Sisi's face. She shrieked at the sight of blood and promptly fainted. Classic. He breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that his newfound internal power let him produce such a convincing amount of blood. He could not help but wonder just how many times he had to fake bleeding to deal with this madwoman. Meanwhile, at the Changhua pavilion, the madam called for Ruyan, saying Boss Shen had specifically requested her company for drinks. Ruyan assured her madam she would take good care of the guest, and Boss Shen chuckled approvingly. She gracefully raised a cup and proposed a toast. The boss eagerly matched her gesture, but in a moment of clumsiness, she accidentally spilled her wine all over Boss Shen's face. The madam scolded her, thinking she had done it on purpose just because she did not like the man. Ruyan protested that it was all because of that damn eunuch, but instead of getting angry, Boss Shen grinned and said he appreciated that kind of treatment, leaving Ruyan and the madam completely dumbfounded. Talk about an unexpected plot twist. Back at the palace, Civilization sneezed loudly, blaming the cold for his misery after days of eating nothing but steamed buns as revenge from that crazy woman. On Sisi's unconscious form, he noticed something odd poking out of her sleeve. Picking it up, he realized it was a small bottle of medicine. This was his ticket to turning things around. 3 days later, the eunuch Haigong bustled about, ordering everyone to move quickly for the big day of the Wu dynasty. With a stern voice, he warned that anyone who embarrassed them would face his wrath, and the servants chorused their acknowledgement. From across the room, Haigong narrowed his eyes as he spotted Civilization doing something strange near the food. Munching on some decent food for a change, Civilization thought how good it was after 3 days of steamed buns. The eunuch approached coldly and called out, "Little Wen." Turning around, Civilization reported that he had finished testing the dishes for poison and would go help, and Haigong nodded approvingly. However, the head eunuch mentioned they were short-handed with serving dishes, so Civilization should lend a hand first. He agreed without hesitation. As soon as Civilization left with the food, Haigong casually poured poison into another dish. Classic underhanded move. 3 days earlier, Civilization had frantically worked to finish the bath brush before Sisi woke up, while she mumbled about blood in her sleep. Haigong stepped forward, declaring he had already tested the dish for poison, and ordered it to be served to the Empress. Classic underhanded move. In his mind, he gloated, thinking that today, the Wu dynasty would finally belong to him. The scene shifted to the palace banquet hall, bustling with noise and activity as nobles and officials took their seats. From across the hall, Zheng Dao spotted Civilization and blurted out his name in surprise. He turned to his father Jia Renyi, demanding to confront the brat right in front of the Empress. But Jia Renyi hissed at him to keep his voice down. Jia Renyi reminded him that this was a reception for the northern barbarian envoys, and any disputes had to wait until after the banquet. Zheng Dao grudgingly agreed. Civilization, meanwhile, was dragging himself through the event, thinking about how Sisi and Ruyan had been tormenting him and ruining his sleep. Unbeknownst to him, Sisi was hiding in a corner, watching his every move, convinced he was planning to meet with the Barbarians. She was determined to catch him red-handed. Suddenly, Civilization felt a chill run down his spine. He whirled around, but no one was there. He wondered why he felt so uneasy, as if someone was plotting against him. And then Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, confirming that she indeed had an eye on him. She scolded him for slacking off and failing to find the dragon vein. Civilization protested that he had searched everywhere but found nothing. Ruyan would not hear it, demanding he produce the clues by today. No excuses. She threatened to expose his lower half to the Empress if he did not comply. Civilization sighed, muttering about his rotten luck with women in this life. Sisi, still tailing him, smugly thought that he was finally making a move, just as she had predicted. She swore that despite his previous slip-ups, today she would gather solid evidence of his treason. Wu Xin, the Empress, noticed Sisi's intense focus on Civilization, and began to wonder if there was really something going on between them. Haigong approached Wu Xin and informed her that everything was ready for the feast. She nodded and gave the signal to begin. He announced loudly that the Empress was taking her seat, and the banquet officially commenced. Bador, the northern envoy, laughed heartily, eager to dig into the dishes he had been craving. He complimented the Wu dynasty's cuisine, finding it excellent. Jirenyi muttered under his breath about the Barbarians' lack of manners. Another official sarcastically remarked that the Minister of Rights, referring to Jirenyi's recent demotion, was absolutely right. Obu, the deputy envoy, whispered to Batur that it was time to proceed with their plan. Batur acknowledged. Obu rose from his seat, announcing that he had heard of the Wu dynasty's talent, and their Khan had prepared 3 riddles to test the court's wisdom. All eyes turned to him, surprised by the sudden challenge. Some officials muttered confidently that they could handle barbarian riddles with ease. Batur played along, asking the Empress for her permission to proceed. Wu Xin replied with regal confidence, stating that Wu dynasty feared no challenge from the north, and told him to go ahead. Obu chuckled darkly and began the first riddle. He described, "There are mountains but no rocks, rivers but no water, roads but no travelers, cities but no people. What is this thing?" The courtiers fell into a hubbub, baffled. How could a mountain exist without rocks? Such a thing was unheard of. On the first try, an official shouted that it was the desert, but Obu simply chuckled and said wrong. Another confidently guessed mountain forest, but Obu again dismissed it as incorrect. The court erupted in murmurs, with some wondering if such a bizarre thing even existed, and others accusing the barbarian of playing tricks. Amid the confusion, Civilization recognized it as a classic riddle from his childhood, and muttered the answer. A map. Before he could speak up, Sisi suddenly appeared beside him, slapping his shoulder and claiming she was about to guess the same thing. He yelped in pain and demanded to know where she came from, rubbing his sore shoulder. Meanwhile, Obu sneered that if a simple riddle could stump them, the Wu dynasty was not so impressive after all. But Sisi piped up loudly, blurting out the answer without hesitation. It is a map. The officials scoffed, calling her a random woman talking nonsense, and questioned who let her into the banquet. Even Wu Xin looked surprised, never expecting her ditzy friend to crack the first riddle. To everyone's shock, Obu grudgingly admitted that the answer was indeed a map, silencing the doubters instantly. Sisi basked in the credit, puffing out her chest, while Civilization muttered under his breath that it was actually his idea. But in his mind, he realized this distraction was the perfect chance to slip away and hunt for the dragon vein, just as Ruyan demanded. His hopes were short-lived, because Obu stepped forward with a sly grin, announcing that there were still 2 more riddles to go. The tension in the hall thickened as everyone braced for the next challenge, and Civilization knew his escape would have to wait. Sisi confidently declared that if there were 2 more riddles, she would crush them, boasting that she would make everyone submit to her genius today. Obu smirked and hoped she would still have that confidence after the next question. He then called out to Batur, who acknowledged with a curt nod. Batur raised a scroll, announcing that the second riddle was written on it. Sisi peered at the scroll, a look of confusion crossing her face. The scroll was covered in strange symbols. It was English, though she did not recognize it, muttering that it looked nothing like the scripts of the Celestial Kingdom. A crowd of officials buzzed, pushing to get a look at the mysterious writing. They murmured among themselves, some saying it resembled ghost scratches, others claiming it looked like symbols from foreign merchant caravans. One old scholar stroked his beard, claiming he would decipher its strange structure given time. Obu laughed loudly, mocking the so-called talented Wu Kingdom for not even understanding the question. Sisi shot back, insisting that she, as a genius, would definitely crack it. Obu gestured for her to proceed, thinking to himself that this foreign question was beyond their reach. Civilization's eyes widened as he recognized the writing. It was English, and he wondered how the barbarians knew it. Suddenly, Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, teasing him for knowing foreign scripts, which made him jump and complain about her speaking in his head. She remarked that he had many secrets, but he quickly dismissed it as a wild guess. Obu taunted them, saying that the Wu people surely could not match the intelligence of the northern barbarians, earning a sharp retort from Sisi to shut up and let her think. Sisi racked her brain, frustrated that even her old teacher had not taught her these symbols. Then a thought struck her, and she spun around, shouting for civilization to stop right there. She grabbed him, demanding where he thought he was going, while he protested, asking what she was doing. She argued that since he had answered the first riddle, he could certainly solve this one, though he found her logic ridiculous. Before he could object, she announced to the court that civilization had volunteered to answer, despite his frantic denials. Zheng Dao stepped forward, anger in his voice, questioning how a mere eunuch could be so presumptuous. Jia Renyi, however, allowed it, saying that if the eunuch failed, they could punish him for his insolence, and Zheng Dao eagerly agreed. Sisi thought to herself that if civilization were colluding with the barbarians, they would ensure he answered correctly and save the kingdom's face. Wu Xin asked him directly if he truly knew the answer, and civilization stammered nervously. Zheng Dao seized the moment, telling him to kneel and confess if he was bluffing, while civilization cursed him under his breath. Civilization turned the tables, demanding what Zheng Dao would do if he answered correctly, and Zheng Dao rashly promised to call him grandfather. Jia Renyi warned his son not to be impulsive, but Zheng Dao was confident he would ruin the eunuch this time. Civilization calmly picked up the scroll and began to explain that this was a common language from the West. He declared it was called English. The officials erupted in murmurs, asking what English was, and wondering if he actually knew the answer. Civilization silently thanked his luck that he had decent English skills before transmigrating, or he'd have been toast. He then translated the riddle for everyone, explaining that it asked what was the beginning of eternity, the beginning of end, and the end of every place. He continued, revealing that it was a simple word riddle, and the answer was obvious once you understood the phrasing. The answer, he declared, was the English letter E. The officials exchanged skeptical glances, some dismissing it as nonsense, others unsure. Zheng Dao seized the chance, accusing civilization of trickery and demanding punishment. Even Batur found it hard to believe that a mere eunuch could know such a thing. But Obu stepped in, confirming that the eunuch was correct. The answer was indeed. The hall buzzed with astonishment, and civilization could not help but puff up with pride. He turned to Zheng Dao, reminding him of their bet and demanding to be called grandfather. Jia Renyi sighed, telling his son to own up to his promise. With great reluctance, Zheng Dao muttered grandfather, and civilization beamed, replying, "That is a good grandson." Not stopping there, civilization cheekily told Jia Renyi and his good big son to step aside. Wu Xin watched him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion, wondering what other secrets he held. Meanwhile, Haigong cast a glance at Wu Xin as she unknowingly ate the poisoned dish. Sisi, convinced that the barbarians were protecting civilization, fumed silently about their collusion. Obu then announced that there was one final riddle left for them to solve. Batur added that this final question would determine the future between their nations. He turned his gaze toward Wu Xin. The last riddle, he declared, must be presented by him personally to the Empress herself. Batur, the barbarian envoy, bowed and requested the Empress's permission to personally present the final riddle. But no sooner had he spoken than Chief Eunuch Hai erupted, accusing the barbarian of overstepping his bounds, and the other officials joined in, denouncing the uncivilized tribe for their audacity. Tao Si Si, however, dismissed their concerns, declaring that the Empress could easily answer any question, leaving Wen Ming puzzled by her confidence. Wen Ming quickly clarified that he would not dream of stealing the Empress's thunder, while Sisi insisted that serving Her Majesty was his honor. The Empress herself, Wu Xin, casually granted Batur permission, saying, "Just one question, bring it up." But privately, Wen Ming felt a strange unease, sensing that the whole affair was blown way out of proportion. He wondered silently why they had to make such a huge fuss over a single question. Suddenly, Ruyan's voice echoed in his mind, warning him that the envoy carried murderous intent, and Wen Ming was startled. He asked how she could sense it, and Ruyan replied that her years of roaming the martial world had sharpened her instincts. She elaborated that she had caught a flash of killing intent in the barbarian's eyes, and that with Wen Ming's cultivation, he should have felt it too. Wen Ming's thoughts turned to the Empress's safety, but Ruyan reassured him that with her strength, any assassination attempt would only backfire. Ruyan then warned him to be careful himself, since his weak cultivation might get him caught in the crossfire. Wen Ming teased if she was worried about him, but Ruyan retorted that she only cared about finding the dragon vein. Meanwhile, the Empress ordered the box to be opened. Curious to see the puzzle, Batter presented the box, bowing as he offered it to Her Majesty. But the moment the lid lifted, a dagger gleamed, and Batter snatched it, lunging at the Empress with a slap. For the Khan, die, he roared. Wen Ming could not believe his eyes, but Ruyan's voice cut in. What did I tell you? Sisi screamed for guards to protect the Empress, shouting a warning. At that moment, the deputy envoy Obu hurled a smoke bomb, engulfing Sisi and the officials in thick smoke. Choking, Wen Ming muttered that the barbarians had come prepared. But the Empress remained unfazed, mocking the pathetic attempt and asking if they really thought it would work on her. Yet during the commotion, a strike grazed her hand, and she realized something was wrong. Dizziness hit her, and her body began to feel out of control. Bater sneered, noting that she had dodged even in that state, but he doubted the poison's potency, directing his frustration at Eunuch Hai. Haigong replied calmly that she was a 9th-rank martial artist and the poison just needed more time. Wu Xin connected the dots, realizing it was the food earlier. She turned to Haigong, demanding an explanation, asking why he would side with the northern barbarians after she treated him well. Haigong laughed bitterly, questioning her claim of kindness. He spat that if the Wu dynasty truly valued him, he would not have become a eunuch. Batur impatiently ordered Haigong to finish her off, but the eunuch snapped that he did not need a barbarian's reminder. With a roar of die, Batur charged, but the Empress defiantly called him a traitor. Haigong joined the assault, coldly warning the Empress that every movement only accelerated the poison's spread. Inside, the Empress felt her breath failing, realizing she could not keep this up. Even Batur was taken aback, marveling at how she could still fight with such a potent poison in her veins. Then he snarled, "Then try this." As he prepared a new attack, Wen Ming watched in horror, his mind racing. The Empress is poisoned, and he could not just stand by and watch her die. Suddenly, a figure intercepted Batur's blade with a bare hand. It was Zheng Dao, boasting that poison and hidden weapons were useless against his 100% immunity. He declared that anyone who wished to harm the Empress would have to go through him first. But Batur responded with a thunderous punch straight to Zheng Dao's face, sending him reeling. Zheng Dao yelped in pain, and Batur mocked him as nothing more than a windbag from the Wu dynasty. Retrieving his knife, Batur turned his gaze toward Wen Ming, sneering that it was now his turn. Sisi screamed in rage at the rebels, shouting that she would kill them all. Haigong sneered, calling her nothing but a reckless little girl without a lick of self-awareness. He launched a relentless assault against her, pressing the attack without mercy. Gathering a crushing force in his palm, Haigong struck Sisi square in the gut, sending her flying back with a pained cry. Sisi gasped, realizing the eunuch had been hiding his true strength all along. Haigong just chuckled, saying he'd recently had some epiphanies. Wu Xin thought bitterly that she could barely protect herself now. Sisi staying would only mean certain death. She decided she had to go all out to cover Sisi's escape. Haigong noticed her shift in focus and narrowed his eyes. Wu Xin declared she had forcibly suppressed the poison, but time was running out. She ordered Sisi to muster the Imperial Guards immediately. Sisi hesitated, asking about her safety, but Wu Xin cut her off firmly. No arguments, that was an order. She added, remembering to take civilization out of this place as well. Wu Xin admitted she had wronged him in the past, and now she just wanted Sisi to get him somewhere safe. Sisi nodded, grabbed civilization, and said, "Follow me." Suddenly, Obu jumped in front of them, blocking the way. He growled that they would not be getting any reinforcements. Sisi clicked her tongue in frustration. She thought to herself that she was no match for this guy. But then Wu Xin flashed behind Obu and kicked him flying, clearing the path in one swift move. She shouted, "Now, go!" And Sisi bolted. Sisi yelled at Civilization, "What are you waiting for? Run with me." Civilization replied that she could summon the guards alone. He had something to do. Sisi was stunned. She snapped at him, "Fine, go die then," and ran off. Civilization thought to himself that he could not just let Wu Xin die like this. He sent a telepathic message to Ruyan, asking her to help him take on the barbarian and the eunuch. Ruyan retorted, "Help you? Why? Would not the Empress's death be better for you?" Civilization argued that if the Empress died, the entire Wu kingdom would fall into chaos, and they might never find the dragon vein. He pressed on. If they helped the Empress now, they'd have free reign in the palace, making it much easier to locate the dragon vein. Ruyan snorted, saying he was just using that as an excuse, because he could not forget his old flame. Civilization denied it hotly. Ruyan relented, agreeing to help just this once, purely for the dragon vein. She warned him not to screw it up. Civilization thanked her profusely. Batter laughed arrogantly, saying the Emperor of Wu was nothing special. Hai Gong added that she was merely a spent force, and wondered how much longer she could hold out. Wu Xin swore that even if it meant her death, she would take them both down with her. She gathered an immense force and unleashed a devastating palm strike that sent both Beaterer and Hai Gong hurtling backward. Spitting blood, Batter gapes in sheer disbelief at how the Empress can still unleash such monstrous power even now. But the effort takes its toll, as Wu Xin herself coughs up blood, her body pushed to its absolute limit. Picking himself up, Hai Gong cackles and admits that the Empress is indeed a formidable warrior. Boasting, the eunuch claims that if he had not recently broken through to a new level, he would not stand a chance. Wu Xin senses his aura, and realizes with a start that he has reached the 9th rank, scoffing as she questions whether a eunuch dares to aim for the pinnacle of power. But Hai Gong retorts that his condition is only temporary, claiming that once he fully masters his technique, he will be able to regenerate his lost parts. Then he declares with a maniacal laugh that when that day comes, the throne will be his. Just then, civilization teleports behind Hai Gong and sneers, asking if a dead eunuch really thinks he can become emperor. Without hesitation, he drives a powerful punch into the eunuch's back, shouting for him to die.